Today's first session is operational procedures. As IT professionals, we are expected to be experts in keeping computers and networks running smoothly. The operational procedures provide a guidance on proper ways to get various tasks accomplished. In this session, we're going to learn about safety environments and considerations, legal procedures, and applying the skills from this session will help us both pass the CompTIA 1002 exam and at the same time help us become safe and well-equipped employees. How we're going to do this is, I hate this little button that hides on me. By the end of this session, our ultimate goal is to be able to describe appropriate safety procedures in different scenarios, apply the appropriate controls when faced with these given scenarios, summarize the process of addressing prohibited content activity, and be able to explain privacy, licensing, and policy concepts, summarize the guidelines for using basic change management. You just can't change willy-nilly stuff. Maybe somebody saw me post in LinkedIn, me changing code while it's in production. It's not pretty. We need to be able to emphasize exactly what we're going to be doing and submit the proper paperwork. Even if the Fortune 500 and we might be in a mom and pop, we want to make sure wherever we are, even if it's not required, that we actually do it so that we know exactly what we did and what we expect, because there is obviously steps that entail inside change management. We're faced as IT professionals, various potential hazards. We've talked about this situation before. We got the ESD, you got the actual electromagnetic interference. You have other natural elements that can come into play. We cover this also within this session today. Overall, what do we need? Teamwork. We need also personal responsibility when it comes to these things, because as I said, we are going to be handling and changing things, and we need to be fully responsible for all courses of action, specifically also when we're coming with the security portion of this, dealing with this prohibited content activity. Unfortunately, you're no one's technically friend when you're in IT. We're in service, and at the same time, and we're part of the security, and we need to make sure that we're not held liable because of the fact that if we saw it, then technically we are accessory to murder if we do not talk. Make sense? I know it's not murder, guys, but just feel it out. Either we get fired or we report it. Because the moment that somebody else reports it and knows that you were inside that computer and you mentioned absolutely nothing, you will obviously be held responsible. Specifically, let's say if they downloaded something and that content was prohibited and created a worm or whatever, and we're not reporting anything, we're trying to just top it. Or cover it, sorry. Questions, concerns? I believe I'll be passing it off to someone at this point.
All right. Today we'll be talking about operational procedures, and pretty much the bulk of this will be a review on things that we have gone over with, especially in the early parts of 1001. But it's a good refresher. They do like to go over this stuff again in 1002, as a lot of it is very relevant and worth repeating to kind of help ingrain it in your mind a little bit. Start us off, Kimberly, can you please read for us?
As a provider of hands-on service like repairing, maintaining, and upgrading computers, IT professionals need to be aware of general safety tips to not harm themselves or the equipment. Also, it is very important to understand the controls to manage devices and power the process of incident response and legal requirements while keeping good communication skills. These will be the main areas to discuss in this session. Safety procedures, personal safety, appropriate controls, addressing prohibited content, policy licensing, and privacy licensing and policies, communication techniques, and professionalism.
Excellent, thank you. First up, we'll be going over the safety procedures that we want to keep in mind when working in an enterprise environment and also working with equipment, things to be aware of, and things that we need to make sure we're doing. We need to be extremely aware of, especially if you're going to be working on any computer components, of electrostatic discharge, because even the smallest amount of shock can irrevocably destroy a computer component. So we want to be sure we're making the proper precautions in order to prevent that from happening, so that we do not ruin equipment, especially very expensive equipment. Electromagnetic interference. We want to be sure that we are shielding from this if it is a factor. Natural elements like humidity, things like that. Electrical and fire safety, and as always, cable management, because you want to be sure your environment is easy to work in and also looks nice and neat. You don't want it to look like a disaster area. And that also, not only does that look unprofessional, it also is difficult for the tech who's going to come behind you and also try to work on this equipment. So electrostatic discharge, or ESD, as we had talked about, I believe in T3 when we were first getting started. It takes up about 3,000 volts before someone can actually feel the shock happen. 10,000 volts if you actually see the spark, but a component only needs 80 volts to damage it to where it is unusable. So who wants to tell me what are the few things that we can do to prevent it? What are some equipment that we can use to prevent ESD? Faison, can you give me one?
I think it was a bracelet. I don't remember the name.
The ESD bracelet?
Yes.
All right, popcorning over to somebody for one more.
Chris.
Chris,
ESD gloves.
ESD gloves, not very common, but becoming more so in recent years. I want to popcorn it over to somebody else for the last one that you will typically see on a regular basis.
Kimberly.
Kimberly, what's the last one?
ESD mat.
Perfect, absolutely. ESD mat. So you typically will see either the gloves, the mat, or the actual bracelets. Those are the three main things you will see on a regular basis. For servers, oftentimes they will use what's called grounding bars to help prevent that. That is something that you might want to keep in the back of your head as well. For server racks, they will use things called grounding bars to help dispel electrical charge as well. All right, any questions with regards to electrostatic discharge? All right. Proper component storage. This is another method you could use for ESD, but this is typically in handling, storing, and or transporting any components. You would have the anti-static bags. This will, if you're working inside the computer, if you take one component out, you put the other one back in this bag, it allows for easy transport storage without worrying about damaging the actual components. So even if you use them to replace a component, oftentimes it is nice to go ahead and just have a few of these on hand. So that you can use them for either components that you're removing that are still viable, but not necessarily needed at this point. Also, the component you're putting in may not be good, and you want to still save the other component just in case to replace it with. All right, component handling. We just talked about this a few seconds ago, where you have the ESD straps or bracelets wrap around your wrist and clip to the inside of the machine. ESD mats, which they have ones you stand on, as well as they also have kinds that can go on the table. I actually have one for my table for when I'm working on mobile devices and or computers. It's very handy to have. All right, self-grounding. Basically, you're just neutralizing the difference in charge between you and the actual computer. And that's essentially what the ESD bracelet is doing. But obviously, before we do any work inside of a computer, what's the first thing you want to do? Neil.
First thing, pull your hair back, take off your jewelry, and ground yourself.
Okay, before you ground yourself inside of a
unplug it.
computer, what do you want to do? And
Unplug it.
there you go. Turn it off, unplug
let
it,
it-
and
Oh, and then hold the power button and getting residual power out of it.
perfect. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
what we want to do. Just to reduce the risk even further of potential shock, especially from a capacitor, because those can do a lot of damage, unfortunately. And you want to make sure you're clipping to a metal part on the computer internally, like frame. And also, if how would I hand off a component to a coworker? What would be something I would do to make sure that there is no difference in charge between me and a coworker? Chris.
Touch the person first before you hand the device to them. That way you've neutralized yourselves.
Absolutely perfect. You pick up the component just any old way, or is there a specific way you're going to pick up components? Say like a RAM module.
Me?
Yeah.
So the first step is to unplug it before grounding yourself
Yes.
and then plug it back in to ground yourself?
No.
Isn't that
The
what the
ESD
step
bracelet
says?
has a no. The ESD bracelet it clips around your wrist, and it has a wire on it with an alligator clip. And what you're doing is you're clipping that clip attached to the bracelet to the computer, and so that creates a connection between you and the computer and neutralizes the difference in charge between you and the computer you're working on.
Okay, so I'm
Okay.
confused why we keep the computer plugged in.
We don't.
I know
keep
that the
computer plugged
book, unfortunately, the book
That's what it
does,
said.
the book does state that nowadays you can do that because it will help with the grounding. I myself would not trust a UPS failing on me and it not doing its job. I recommend that you want to unplug this device, just like back in the days. I understand the book does say that, fully aware of that. But unfortunately, us old school, I don't know about you. I just don't trust 110 volts just flying in there by mistake and something happening.
So real world, unplug
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
Testing, plugged in.
If I doubt they're going to give you that type of question where they're going to try to mess with you in a real world scenario, unplug everything because you don't know which ones can and which ones can't. Now you're going to have to decide. From right now, they tell you that the PC can do that, but can you do that with a router? Can you do that with a printer? Can you do that? So therefore, rule of thumb, just unplug. So you, when there's doubt, just unplug.
Well,
Your best bet.
It also goes to building your methodologies. When you're going through a troubleshooting process or a repair process, you want to be able to use the same steps every time. That way you do not forget something. So rather than trying to say with this type of device, you leave it plugged in, with this type of device, you unplug it, just have the exact same procedures every time. That way you don't make a mistake and, leave one plugged in that should have been unplugged. Sure.
Their technical term, you understand what they're saying here? I'm sorry, that was Marcus, right?
Yeah,
So you have a three prongs that come from the wall, and it has its own grounding. So what they're saying is that if you leave it plugged in, since you have that grounding wire, and you touch it, it will drain all electric static charge from you. But you still want to unplug it after you finish doing what it says. Does that make
okay.
more sense?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Thanks.
All right.
I think the only time, if you have it open, you would plug it in is if you were going to be using a multimeter and testing your voltages inside. That'd be the only time you would typically leave it plugged in. And even then you would want to proceed with caution. All right. Electromagnetic interference, or EMI. Kadon, would you please read for us?
Electromagnetic interference, also known as radio frequency interference, is a magnetic field interfering with electronics. EMI isn't nearly as dangerous as ESD, but it can cause permanent damage to some component and ease data on storage devices. You could prevent EMI by keeping magnets away from computer equipment, avoiding places cordless phone close to SOHO routers or WAP, installing SOHO routers and WAP away from microwave ovens.
Excellent. EMI can also affect your network transmissions. So in cases where you might have cabling running near cordless phones or things like that, sometimes where there's heavy machinery being operated, this can be an issue, especially in warehouse settings. You would use shielded cable. So you have the UTP, which is the unshielded twisted pair, and then you would have the shielded twisted pair. And they even have a shielded adapter for the RJ45 that you would use to plug into the system. Can anybody tell me what is the type of network transmission cable or networking cable that is immune to EMI or RFI?
Optic.
Very good, Marcus. Thank you very much. Fiber optic is the only one that is immune to EMI or RFI. Anything that operates over copper is vulnerable to it. All right, natural elements. Let's see here. Ronald, can you please assist?
All right, natural elements. Computers should be always operated in cool environments away from sunlight and water sources. Some safety procedures are keeping liquids away from computers, keep computers in a cool environment, maintain a computer free of dust and dirt. And the next slides focus on maintaining the environment and tools for cleaning systems.
Okay. As you know, typical scenario is computers tend to like it a little bit cooler than we do. Definitely do not like it getting too hot. They get too hot, components start getting damaged, they cannot function properly, and you can start seeing systems crashing as a result of an overly hot environment. Why would we not want there to be too much humidity in an environment where we would keep our servers? See, Alimu.
Sorry, what's the question again?
Why would we not want there to be too much humidity where we keep our servers or computers? What would be the result?
Oh, because the moisture and the condensation, something.
Okay, condensation. What else?
Mm.
If you have too much condensation on metal, what happens? Or prolonged condensation on metal?
Yeah, so it comes the mashing though.
Anybody want to help out?
Corrosion.
Corrosion, rust, oxidation. So if you have too humid an environment, your components could actually start to rust and will not function properly. What happens if we have too low humidity? What is a danger of that? Alvarez.
That's electrostatic, right?
Electrostatic, very good. So if we have too little humidity, we get static electricity. Too much humidity, we get corrosion. So oftentimes in server farms and stuff like that, you will typically have humidity monitors, and they will monitor that stuff very closely so that components are not damaged due to this. So you want to maintain a happy environment. The liquids, yeah, obviously you do not want to, liquids around your computers, because lots of liquids and electronic components does not mix. And dust and dirt, especially in warehouse environments, can become a problem. And you will see oftentimes that they will cover computers and stuff like that to try to minimize that as much as possible. But you kind of have to balance between not letting dust in and allowing for good airflow. All right. There we go. See, David, can you please help us out with this one?
Closely related to a friendly computing environment are temperature, humidity, and ventilation. Temperature. The larger servers, communications equipment, and drive arrays generate considerable amounts of heat. A computer room will typically require a full-time environmental control. The average temperature should be 68 to 71 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 to 21 degrees Celsius. Humidity. Humidity levels should be maintained around 50%. Be careful not to increase the humidity too far to the point where moisture starts to condense on the equipment. Ventilation. Rounding out temperature and humidity is ventilation. It is important that clean air, circulate around computer equipment to keep it cool and functioning properly. Server rooms require much more attention to ventilation than office spaces.
Excellent. Marvin or Diego, do you guys recall if they get into hot and cold aisles on A+?
I do not recall, and
I have some slides with hot and cold aisles soon.
Do
I
what?
think so. I think they do mention hot and cold aisles, yes. I know for
with
sure in
regards-
Security Plus and Network Plus, I
Yeah,
think they do,
that's-
but I'm not. I think they have
That's
it.
what those things, like, I know it was there, but I couldn't remember if they mentioned it in A+. Basically, I mean, it's kind of it's a pretty basic concept in server rooms. When computers or servers or anything are drawing in air, they're typically drawing it in from the front, they're pushing it out the back. The cold air comes in the front, hot air goes out the back. And to make circulation run more efficiently within server rooms, what they'll do is they'll create a cold aisle, which that entire aisle is nothing but the front of machines, and then the next aisle will be nothing but the back of machines, so that you're able to draw in that hot air and then push out the cold air into the cold aisle. So it makes it a much more efficient airflow and being able to maintain the temperatures of the server rooms. So they do that by, like we were just saying, creating hot and cold aisles. All right. Tools for cleaning. Let's see here. Camille, can you please help us out?
All right. Compressed air. You can remove dust and debris from inside computers with compressed air blown in short bursts. The short bursts are useful in preventing the dust from flying too far out and entering another machine, as well as in preventing the can from releasing the air in liquid form. Vacuums. Dust can build up not just within the computer, but also in crevices on the outside. Some ports need to be blown out with compressed air or cleaned with an electronic vacuum before being used, or degradation with the device connected to them could occur.
Okay. Why couldn't you use just a regular old vacuum?
I would say electronic shock, because the vacuums create a lot of static charge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yes, there are specific vacuums that they use for this purpose. You can't just use any regular vacuum. And compressed air are two main ways you would clean internally from a computer and many of its components. All right, fire safety. I think we remember going over this earlier. And yes, you do need to know the classifications of fire extinguishers. Where Class A typically tends to be a can with a pump on it and uses typically water, and it's used for wood and paper fires. You have B for flammable liquids, which tends to be a foam or something like, along those lines. And then you have C, which is a fire extinguisher type specifically for electrical fires, so they do not allow for electric shock. And I believe they used to use, and I think they do sometimes mentioned it, was halon extinguishers in big server rooms and stuff like that. And that was really big for several years, but they opted to get away from that. I don't remember, Diego, if you do, what are they using now instead of the halon?
Halon is still available. The problem with that is because since it sucks all the oxygen out of the room, people tend to drop like flies when that happens. Obviously, you don't want to be in that environment when it happens. It does give you a big loud alarm before it actually turns on, so it gives you a leeway to get out of the room. But obviously, if you don't have enough time to get out, then you drop.
But I don't,
usually that's all that. I can't think of anything else that they're using because of the fact that you can't throw foam, you can't throw anything in there.
Yeah. Well, no, I know I thought they moved on to, there was another chemical they moved on to after halon. I'll see if I can figure it out. But I know they were moving away from halon just because if you have techs working in there, it's not conducive to their health. Right. There is the ice cream truck. Be a 5-minute break. Pause the recording.
I dropped the link for the PNG for the fire extinguishers too in the chat.
Excellent. And most of the ones you will come across typically are A, B, C rated, so rated for all three. And typically you will need, it's a good idea just to know where they are in any given building where you're at. They should be clearly marked and actually should be documented. There is documentation that you need to keep up to date in almost any work environment as to where the fire extinguishers are, any chemicals that are in the building and things like that. All needs to be documented and in a well-known location throughout the office. All right, cable management. A lot of times, especially if we're in a hurry, we don't typically think about making it look pretty when we're about to leave, making it look nice and neat and well organized and things like that, because we're typically in a rush to get in there, get something fixed, get out, and get on with our day. But making sure everything is properly routed, it's all nice and neat, tying up the cables so they don't get snagged, they won't get ripped out by accident if somebody's passing through there, or if you're swapping out equipment and stuff like that. It definitely makes it easier for you if you come back, or any tech that follows you. And then, also anybody who comes through there, you don't want them basically looking at what's like a spaghetti bowl coming off of your servers. It's just nice, clean cable management.
I got a problem.
And that's not just in server rooms. It's also in with desktops and workstations. You don't just want the cables strewn haphazardly across the desk. One monitor plug going all the way across the desk to some other one, and things are getting all bundled up and twisted. You want it looking nice and neat and organized. What were you saying, Alvarez?
Oh, I got a problem with that. If you look behind my console, it looks like Medusa's head.
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple areas I got to work on that myself, and sometimes it's It's so tight, it's really hard to be able to do it correctly.
Yeah.
One of the tricks I heard like behind entertainment centers is get a real dark pillowcase. And once you get everything bundled up, you can slip it into the pillowcase. And then so if you're looking from the front into the console, you can't see the cables.
Oh, okay.
Marvin likes to use zip ties. Me personally, I go ahead and I'll go to Amazon and buy the Velcro straps. You can get about 100 or 150 of them for about $4 or $5. They're reusable, and they are a lifesaver. The Velcro straps.
Yeah, I tried to use wire ties, but that doesn't work.
The zip ties are great if you're never going to undo it or you don't move stuff around a lot. But the Velcro ties, especially in enterprise environment, stuff like that, it's reusable and it's just real quick and easy to unvelcro it. You do what you need to do, and then you Velcro things back up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to use that because I found out about the wire ties when I had to like downsize my stuff because of my kid. Had to make some room for his stuff, so I had to like take my stuff apart, downsize it, and put it back together.
In an industry setting, that hole that comes out of the desk, so the wires come through,
yeah,
that hole's not moving. So you grab your zip tie, you tighten it up. Whenever you need to come over there, you just unplug either the monitor or the desktop. I meant the PC itself, but those cables typically stay put, and it can help the end user from doing too much back there too. So
what may change is the positioning of like monitors and all that stuff on the desk. So like if you have like the little prairie dog farms where you have like an L-shaped small desk that you operate off of, and the hole is in the back corner in the center, and that person wants that monitor there, then that works great. But if then all of a sudden they want to shift that monitor to the other side, now you've got to cut all that stuff loose, reconfigure it, and things like that. These are things that do happen. So you got to work with the circumstance within, in your office. So it's personal preference. I just prefer the Velcro straps. Give a few feet, but no more. All right. Personal safety. As we were talking about, like the ESD bracelets, it's not just about protecting the equipment, it's also about protecting you, making sure that you are doing what you're needing to do before you get into that computer. As we were talking about earlier, before you do anything inside of a computer, shut it down, turn it off, press the power button, make sure you dispel all the stored energy in it, remove jewelry. Things can get snagged. They can, if you have like a gold ring or something like that, and you hit two connectors, you can actually create a connection between the two and damage the components that way. Use proper lifting techniques. A lot of times people don't think about that. Towers can get pretty heavy. So, you always be sure to lift with your legs, not with your back. If you lift with your back, you're likely going to hurt yourself. May not be this time, it may be the next time. And if you have ever had a back injury, you will always remember it. It's better to, push a cart rather than to pull the cart. And then always be sure you're using the appropriate tool for the job. My brother is fond of saying every tool is a hammer. That isn't necessarily the case. But, make sure you're using the appropriate tools for what you need to get done, and you have the tools you need. Improvising with tools can lead to bad ends because you can end up damaging components because you're just trying to make something work or something fit. All right. See, Faison, can you please help out with this one?
Disconnect power before repairing PC. Never attempt to remove a case, open a case, or work on any element that is carrying electricity without first disconnecting it. If removing power on the device you are working on is more complicated than just unplugging it, then use a voltmeter to make sure the current is off at the device before proceeding. Remove jewelry. Gold and other metals are great conductors of electric current. The last thing you want while working on a problem is for the gold chain around your neck to fall against the capacitor. Take it off. While not all jewelry is metallic, all jewelry is snagging hazard.
And it's generally a good safety procedure whenever you're doing anything mechanical to remove your jewelry, rings, necklaces, anything like that. If you're working on a car, if you're working on, a wood project in the shop, if you're working on a computer, anything like that, it's just good practice to go ahead and, take off any jewelry you have before proceeding. It's better safe than sorry. All right. Lifting techniques. Kareem, can you please help out, sir?
Lifting techniques. An easy way to get hurt is by moving equipment in an unsafe or improper way. Some safe lifting techniques always to keep in mind. Lift with your legs, not your back. When you have to pick something up, bend it at the knees, not at the waist. You want to maintain the natural curve of the back and spine when lifting. Be careful to not twist when lifting. Keep the weight on your center line. Keep objects as close to your body as possible and at waistline. Where possible, push instead of pull, or use a cart instead of lifting.
Excellent, thank you. Typically, though, in an enterprise environment, they will say you won't lift much more than 40 pounds. That'll probably be around the maximum. But there's always an exception to the rule depending on which environment you work in. But just please pay attention to these rules. Somebody who has had severe back injuries can tell you you don't want them. They can put you down for quite a while. All right, appropriate tools. Let's see, Marcus, can you please help us out with this one?
Using appropriate tools, safety goggles. In any environment where you may get dust or harmful materials in your eyes, you should wear safety goggles. For example, when you are cleaning up printer toner. There are also safety glasses that can be used when spending long hours staring at a computer screen that will reduce eye strain that comes with this type of activity. Air filter mask. Air filter masks should always be available, and technicians should be encouraged to wear them in any situation where safety goggles are called for, or in any scenario where you have reason to believe that the surrounding air may contain harmful compounds.
All right. Well, in the current environment, masks tend to be encouraged to be wear almost any time. So that doesn't seem to be something that you will need constant reminder of currently, though going forward that may change. Safety goggles, highly encourage it for the two reasons that they mentioned. One being, especially if you're blowing out a computer and there's a whole bunch of dust and debris in there, you don't want to get that in your eyes because it's zero fun. But if you already wear glasses and work on computers a lot, you probably already have the blue filters coatings that you put on your lenses. I can attest they definitely help with eye strain because almost any pair I get nowadays, I make sure I have those blue filters on there. If you don't wear glasses, I think they make pretty inexpensive ones if you're going to be working on a screen for hours and hours at a time. Definitely keep your eyes from getting overly tired. So I would also recommend those. I think you can pick up a pair for probably under 20 bucks on Amazon or something like that, just in the event that you're going to be working on a screen for several hours, like studying. Questions or concerns?
So not to discredit you, Kelly, but because I had this issue not that long ago, and I went to the eye doctor, and I asked him about those the yellow tinted glasses, and he said that those have pretty much no effect on reducing eye
Not
strain.
the yellow tinted, no, the blue light filters.
I mean, like the UV.
Yeah, like the blue, it's a blue light filter. They tend to help a lot with, yeah, the yellow ones like you would see like at the shooting range. Yeah, I've never, really seen people use those, but the blue light filters definitely help a lot, especially like in the evening times, because blue light kind of prevents your brain from starting to wind down in the evening times, which is why like on your phone, they'll have the night settings where it'll go to warmer colors, because then it still allows your brain to start producing melatonin so you can go to sleep at a regular interval. Because if you're staring at like cooler colors like blues and stuff like that, it can keep you awake longer.
Or you could be like me. My glasses don't have any lenses in them. I just wear them because they make me feel smart.
Marvin, how could you?
I know, man. I know.
You'd be trained as 4 eyes everywhere.
I normally wait to the end to show that one, but I'm like, you know what? This is perfect time. Yeah, I feel like they just make me feel like, hey, I'm focused now. It's time to get to work. So when I don't have them, I feel a little, I don't know, naked.
He's Superman. That's what it is. He's Superman on his day
Oh,
off.
there you go. These are my.
You won't recognize him as soon as he takes it off. You just don't
like,
know
who is
him.
that guy? Who is that guy? That is the funniest thing about that. He just had the glasses on. You can't. That's the same guy. I got it, Kelly. If there's no more questions,
right. But yeah, real quick, David, I will ask actually my eye doctor about the blue light ones versus. I know the yellow light ones don't really do much, but I'll ask about the blue light ones just to be sure. I'm curious about that now.
Yeah, especially since there's like, you go on Amazon, there's like so many different things. I feel like you got to really like read the labels carefully.
True. Thank you for the tip on that. I'll look into that.
all right. Passing the baton to yours truly. We're going to talk about safety documentation, handling of toxic components, and managing power. It's going to feel like deja vu here. So we'll hit on some things. This first one is safety documentation. Chris, right? Do you have any experience with an MSDS sheet in your work history?
Oh, yes.
I thought so. If you'll read this one for me, sir.
Any type of chemical, equipment, or supply that has the potential to harm the environment or people has to have a material safety data sheet, MSDS, document associated with it. These are traditionally created by the manufacturer, and you can obtain them from the manufacturer or from the Environmental Protection Agency. Among the information they include are such things as boiling point, melting point, flash point, and potential health risks. They also cover storage and disposal of recommendations and the procedures to follow in the case of spill or leak. Every company has these because you've got to have a supply closet with cleaning supplies. So
Right.
there always should be an MSDS somewhere.
A big deal for the healthcare system. They do their own internal audits before they get audited by whatever governing body. They would make sure that we knew exactly how to get to it, be it the hard copy that's located in the building or on our PCs. And I mean, it was a big deal where if you didn't do it, people are upset. So to help everybody out, they just made a shortcut on the home page. So it's so easy to get to. But very, like Chris said, we all will, in more cases than not, will have something of this. And depending on your industry and the amount of chemicals they're using, the amount of pages this documentation is or how thick it is. So, but we did have to know where it was, how to get to it. And if they ask us to look up something, we should be able to look it up. So MSDS. Thank you, Chris. All right, handling toxic components. Many components that are in computers should not be thrown away in the trash. We know this. Some are, to not name all of them, batteries, toners, and CRT monitors. With batteries, there are a lot of different components that could be in there, namely mercury, lead, cadmium, lithium. But I tell you, toner is also something, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's go to CRT monitors. Before I was knowledgeable, I would see CRT monitors for garbage men to pick up. I don't know if I'm only the person that's seen that, but I would see those on on the curb or on. Okay, as well, Alvarez.
Yep, I've seen it.
And I don't know if it's that they didn't know, or of course we didn't know. I didn't know that you couldn't or you shouldn't have. But to be honest with you, the only reason they were throwing away, it probably was still working. They were just tired of them being taking up so much space.
I remember when you had the old monochrome screens and people were switching the color. You saw a bunch of those get dumped.
And as it says, that the one of the issues is under pressure, and if the screen breaks, that pressure can be released and can cause some injury. A lot of times when you see them, the screen is not broken. It's just a big clunky monitor that needed to be recycled correctly, but may have not been. But the reason that it should be because of the elements that's found within it. So keep that in mind. We do recycle CRT monitors because of the materials. And with toners, to be totally honest, in the industry setting, if you're one of the ones that's replacing a toner, when you take out the new, this is my experience, when you take out the new toner to put into the printer, what's inside that box of the new toner? Anybody?
MSDS.
Yeah, okay, but there's one important little label there.
Yep.
Oh, the mail label to recycle it.
There you go. I figured somebody would have to deal with you. They give you the supplies to recycle it. The bag, the label, and you just take the new one out, put it in, put the old one back in that box, and you're sending it back off.
Yeah.
They kind of make it easy. Alvarez, you're hip to it now?
Yeah, I had to think about it. Yeah, we had it for the printers at work at my last job.
Make it very easy for you to give it back to them, because like I said, it's being recycled and they're going to reuse what they can. So the marathon continues. So that's something I wanted to bring note. Maintaining power. Let's see, who had power issues here? Marcus, where you at? I think Marcus is one of my power guys. If you're available, speak. If not, Muhammad.
Maintaining power. A number of power-related threats can harm computers. Among them are the following. Blackout. This is a computer failure of the power supply. Brownout. This is a drop in voltage lasted more than a few minutes. SAG or SAG. This is a short-term voltage drop. Spike. This is a short typical under 1 second increase in voltage that can do in irreparably damage to equipment. Surge. This is a long spike, sometimes lasting many seconds. That a surge is typical, a least intense increase in power. It can also damage equipment.
Thank you, sir. And I want to go back over. So blackout, we probably all are aware of the blackout. That's the complete, when a city block hits complete darkness, we call it a blackout. But when you have power, but not the amount of power that you are used to, especially like when it gets, best example is what happened to, who's in Texas? Somebody's in Texas. Faison, yeah. You probably, before it went totally dark, you had a brownout when you were on a very short amount of power for a while, because the energy source is trying to figure out how to divvy it up to keep it going, because they know that they can't run at full power for whatever the reason may be. So that SAG is a as it says, is a short-term voltage drop. And unlike the sag, the opposite of that is going to be a spike, which is a increase in voltage. So, and then you also have the surge, which is a longer. And I'm trying to get you used to the wording here. So that surge is much longer, the spike is shorter, sag is shorter, brownout is longer, blackout is total blackout. Get used to the lingo here. Faison, I'm gonna let you finish this one off for me since you had the power issue.
Maintaining power. The two solutions for the power issues are battery backups and surge suppressors. Battery backups. A battery backup or uninterruptible power supply, UPS, keeps the system up and running when the normal power is removed. Even installations that use generators to keep the system running, battery backups are usually still used so they can keep the machines running while the generators come up to speed. Surge suppressors. A surge suppressor keeps a spike from passing through it and onto the equipment that could be damaged. Tripping occurs when the breaker on the device, such as a power supply, surge protector, or UPS, turns off the device because it received a spike. Under most circumstances, the breaker is reset and the operations continue as normal.
Thank you. So the UPS, the sole purpose of UPS, people, is not to keep you going throughout the duration of whatever that outage is. It's so you can properly shut down the devices that you have running so you don't fall victim to in other words, a hard shut off. So you want to be able to save if you got things that need to be saved, or you want to just power it down the appropriate way so you don't cause any issues. That's the purpose of a battery backup. Now, the surge protector, which typically you can have a combination of surge and battery backup together, but if you just had a surge protector, if that spike happened like we just talked about, it should trip that surge suppressor, causing the device to not get hit by that increase in spike. It's just there as like a buffer, kind of like a fuse. So you want to make sure that you blow the fuse before you cause any damage to the systems that you're using. Now, if you wanted to keep everything going for quite a long time after the power is turned off, what device, what is that called? What is that referred to as?
You need a generator for that.
That's a generator. That's a generator. Okay, I just want to make sure we was in the same boat. So that is correct. Thank you, Alvarez. All right. Incident report or response. I'm sorry. Let's see. Ronald. Haven't heard your lovely voice today, sir.
All right. Incident response. The extent to which a security event causes harm to your network largely depends on the speed and quality of your response to the incident. By following a structured incident response policy, the chances of minimizing the damage and the likelihood that you will be able to bring parties to justice in the case of illegal activity are greatly enhanced. The specific steps will depend on company policies, but these are general guidelines. Number one, the first response is to identify the problem, reporting it through proper channels, and preserving the data and the device. Number two, documentation, and three is chain of command.
Chain of custody, but same thing. Thank you, sir. I want to know, I'm trying to see, I think Joe, have you been a part of an incident response, sir?
Yes, quite a few times. Also with Diego. So
okay.
Yeah.
I want you to speak from your vantage point from beginning to end. Just kind of summarize how your company addressed it and what was the fallout of it.
So we got a help desk, right? So they get a call, and let's say our Meadowlands, which is one of the biggest hubs in UPS, has a total power outage. It's in New Jersey, right? So while they're determining what they should do with it, one of their TSG supervisors and managers call the desk I was at, ICS, which is intermediate computer support, right?
Okay.
So the first level desk should just automatically escalate it to us, but they always take, for some reason, too long. So I'm working on it, and then I get a call that our operations command center, which is called OCC, knows about the issue,
Okay.
and they give me a bridge number to call, right?
Okay.
So while I'm working on it, I let them know I'm still working on it, and then I get myself connected to the bridge, and then I get their TSG manager, TSG supervisor connected also to the bridge, right?
Got you.
So everybody is panicking, not really panicking, but wanting to know what's up. People are saying what needs to happen. In the meantime, I'm just fixing everything so that they can get back into operation, right?
Okay.
And people want to make sure that certain things are happening in certain ways, because in a big operation like what UPS has in its big package centers, different applications, services and servers have to start in a correct order. For example, databases cannot start before application servers. Application servers, I got that backwards. Databases have to start, and then the applications servers start so they can connect to the database, right?
Makes sense.
It's certain power in certain areas of the building. You have to make sure that that's on, especially if the site is using a generator. You got to make sure that the technician on site connects it to the right power outlet that powers the switch that operates the MDF, the room that has the servers in them. And anyway, all these guys will be trying to communicate and work together, and there'll be 30 or 40 people on a phone at the same time in these situations, because, for example, if we move to a different site called Catch, which was the biggest site in UPS.
Sorry to interrupt you, Joe. A question though, in reference to the question of incident response, we're looking for an example of a situation where security is involved, not that the whole site is down. We're looking at mainly of a
Oh,
security
I'm sorry,
or
I
a
misunderstood,
policy
guys.
issue.
I wish you would have stopped me an hour ago.
I was waiting on the pause, Joe. I was gonna get you. I was gonna reel you back in. I was waiting on the pause,
But we can take the example that I was just getting, right? I mean, I was giving you an example that I worked on, but there was a smaller example where what happened is a TSG during a power outage went into a server room and did not close the door. So we called security, and we called not security, but we called the electricians, and they came to figure out what was going on. And without telling anybody, after I got everything fixed, they shut down the main circuit breaker so they could test it. So brought the whole site back down.
Okay.
That's a good one, right?
Yes. Well, you're taking a whole site down. Let me rephrase and I'll tell you a story of
I got one too.
Of a man named Brady. Unfortunately, well, here's the situation. What they're talking about in this given scenario is in identifying the problem, reporting it through proper channels, and actually preserving data. This person unfortunately had inappropriate material inside his computer, and greatly, he unfortunately shared the information with other people, per se. Obviously, at that point, we do have to respond, identify that there is a problem and what it is. We reported it to security and HR, what happened, and we created a digital copy to preserve the data and the device. Usually it's called Hohinder. Hohinder now grabs a digital copy without actually touching or editing any of the files. You document everything, put in a nice, beautiful box, and ship it to the correct amount of people with the documentation inside. So this is what they're talking about for incident response in reference to breaking of company policies and guidelines. Not
Appreciate
power issues or major issues, which would be an emergency response. I think you're getting the emergency with the
I was going with the leaving the server door open as a security incident.
my I can only speak from my vantage point. So I working in a hospital setting, there are certain places that you provide information to, and be honest with you, if Joe or Diego, any of you came to my facility and I have to do some work with you, be it an X-ray or MRI, something like that, I have access to your chart, and I can venture into other places that you had to visit doctors, their documentation, their notes, the diagnosis. Like, I have all that, but of course, all that is also tracked. So I just do and stay in the places that I supposed to. But I worked in the orthopedic facility, so a lot of that can be self-pay. So insurance may not cover everything. So the patient that I'm speaking of had to go to the PARS, which is the patient account rep, before they was able to come see me. And I saw them. That wasn't the issue. Come to find out that patient knew the PARS rep, like, personally, and they had family that worked together. Needless to say, that account rep went into that patient's file and seen things and spoke of the stuff that they saw to other people, and that wasn't inside the scope of what they needed to do to address the situation. I got a call because I was a part of that chain, and they took my portion of information, wanted to know, what my steps were and what I needed to do. They took the PC, which they really didn't have to do. Everything is digital, just like what Diego said. And that rep lost their job because they were able to forensically check where they went in that file. And it, like I said, went outside the scope of their job. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal, and having a proper chain, and also just knowing the steps on how to address the situation, like Ronald just said, can make things keep things tightly and in order. She knew once it got out that she was known to have went somewhere else on that computer that it wasn't any fighting that. Because my first thought was like, that's not of her character. Maybe she misstruck a tab or something, but no, she ultimately lost her job, and it's unfortunate, but that's just a part of doing your job and knowing your job and following the SOPs, standard operating procedures, and also just being mindful that when you have certain responsibilities as a IT professional or healthcare professional, you are held to certain standards. I mean, I'm expecting somebody that's making my food to have a certain hygiene standard. So you would think that somebody that's looking at your documentation will have certain ethical standards. So we have ways to address that, and we follow an incident response. So it's, like I said, it's unfortunate, but it happened. I want, let's see who we have here. Who's available? I want to go to the next page. Kimberly, if you don't mind. Just the first part. You don't even have to read all of it.
Oh, okay. A part of identifying the problem involves identifying what policy or law prohibits such action. Prohibited content generally falls within the following characteristics
and
categories.
Thank you, ma'am. to show off a little bit of those that's exploiting people, promoting harassment, that information, promoting racism, adult content, piracy or privacy rights. So that fell within the privacy rights because, like I said, it's health information, and she was privy to it, and she didn't need to be. So, and this list continues to grow, but once you know where it falls, there's steps to address each and every one of those categories. So this is just the first base of addressing those issues. Still made me sad because she was a really, really, really sweet person. First response, report through the proper channels. So as I'm privy to the story, once that information got out, the patient called our hospital facility and talked to the what is that? The charting department, the place where you keep all your reports and goes. And she placed the complaint. And once they realized where the issue took place, they was able to identify the PC, which had an asset tag, and they were able to, like I said, forensically go in and see those steps that the individual took to see that information that they were not privy to through to the scope of their job. So it went from a complaint to the reporting department, who then went to the IT administration, security department, and that ball just started rolling. In a matter of 24 hours, they had enough information that they just went through the steps of interviewing her, but she knew that was her job. So if the violation is only if the violation is one only of the company policy, then usually the company's human resource department is the proper channel. They got looped in as well. I left that out. But once they touched the information, it still just makes me sad. So she eventually had to tell her side of the story. And of course she apologized, and she couldn't get back into her office. The computer was gone, and our manager of that building packed all her stuff up. So that's how serious this and other offenses can be. So just be mindful of that.
Hey, on that last slide, that last paragraph, is that correct? That if say I see somebody like leaking or doing something that's like a federal violation, I can't think of anything federal.
Anything that you see as an IT individual and do not report, you are held liable. You are liable. You're just as good as security. If you do not report it, you're part of it.
Willful ignorance does not apply to us anymore.
In our role, unfortunately, we can't. Joe, I think you were saying something. I just looked up and I saw you. I'm not sure if you're talking to somebody in your room.
There we go. Sorry. So in that last paragraph, I'm talking about like reporting it to the manager. I mean, if I'm just a non-exempt employee, means I'm not a non-exempt employee, which means I'm hourly, or I get overtime as a salaried employee, means I'm not in the supervisor manager chain or hierarchy authorial chain. I'm still responsible to report this separately from my HR manager to the federal authorities, like call the FBI on some of this stuff.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly, but let's say somebody is embezzling millions of dollars. You went and reported to the HR manager, and you notice that nothing was done. You know that if they're embezzling millions of dollars, you are now part of the cover-up. Do you understand, unfortunately, what happens in the United States? And ignorance, unfortunately, does not absolve us. It's illegal for you not to continue to try to follow up on a federal law. We're not talking about just a simple thing that somebody put inside. We're talking about a federal law. You told it to HR, you told it to your boss, but you notice that weeks have passed by and nothing's being done. The cover-up continues. Then yes, you technically can be held liable the moment they come in.
Yeah,
Just
I
like the
totally
little
understand that when you gave me that example, Diego. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah.
I
Let's not
apologize.
overthink.
I
We're
did skip
looking
that.
at federal. Yeah, we're looking at federal laws here. That's
Yeah.
not just a regular little offense.
So as it states, if like Diego and Joe just hashed out, if you invite this information to your manager and it doesn't go anywhere, you need to take it to the next step and you need to see it through because, like I said, once again, you need to be a part of the solution at the point since you recognize and see the problem. Data device preservation, which is of the utmost. If you do that quickly, we can identify, grab that PC, like I said earlier, and make sure that it's turned into the proper authorities or proper command. We talked about with even like certificate of destruction, or if you're changing a device out, you need to make sure that we can follow who had that device all the way through to ensure that we're able to preserve that information. Let's see here. I'm going to read this last couple. If you are ever unsure how to proceed, you should immediately contact your supervisor, of course, because knowing what to do when something is discovered is something that may not come naturally. It is a good idea to include the procedures you generally follow in an incident response plan. The IRP outlines what steps are needed and who is responsible for deciding how to handle the situation. As I was getting that, Joe was explaining it in an hourly wage position. Your next best bet is going to take it to the powers that be, which is your direct supervisor. Say, for instance, your direct manager supervisor is the culprit. You take it to their supervisor or you take it to HR. Because once you take it to HR, they typically will throw that ball in the right, pass it to the right hands, and you can avoid what we come to find out is retaliation that could happen for bringing that information out. Not saying that that will happen, but you want to make sure that you're covered for doing the right thing. That needs to happen. All right. Documentation. Document everything that could be relevant to the situation. Many companies have standard documentation that's issued in incident response in order to ensure that the responder captures important information and do not forget to ask critical questions or look for vital clues. We kind of talked about chain of custody. The removed materials should be secured and turned over to the proper authorities. Depending on the situation, materials may be held in a safe, locked location at an office, or they may be need to turn over to local authorities, depending on how egregious this issue is. It is very important to label and catalog everything as part of sealing, storing, and protecting the evidence. Just want to make sure that we can easily, concisely see where it was and where it went and who touched it. That's pretty much the case. If it's done very neat and nice, this chain of custody will be really short. It'll be from you to your supervisor to the powers that be. You won't have too many points of entry in that chain of custody. The shorter, the better. All right. Privacy, licensing policies, managing software licenses, types of licenses, and working with personable, identifiable information. In an industry setting, you'll have a lot of different licenses, right? And you need to be aware of agreements, certain type of agreements. I think it's EULA. Bam, jump right on it. Miss Camille, if you will read this one for me.
All right, managing software licenses. Operating systems, application software, and many third-party utilities require a license to legally use the software. It also requires that you accept an end user license agreement, EULA, whereby you agree to use the software as described in that agreement. Music and movie files, on the other hand, are protected by digital rights management, DRM. This is a system that maintains control over these files and ensures that they are installed only on devices that belong to the person who purchased the file, with the end goal being to prevent users from sharing and giving these away without paying for them.
Thank you, ma'am. DRM needs to do a better job. I'm pretty sure they have improved over the years, but it's tough. But everybody's streaming now. So I think since we've all embraced this change, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be. But like Camille said, you following the EULA protects the company because you're using that software the way that they intended it to be used. And if you're not a self-proclaimed music and movie critic like myself, you do not have the ability to have access to music without paying for it. Just FYI. You can always go to YouTube. YouTube can give you a lot of hits. But the DRM is there to ensure that we're following directions as far as things like piracy, things of that nature. So I'm gonna talk this one through before we try to get out of here. Open source versus commercial license. We already know, just like with the software that we talked about with Linux and things of that nature, you have open source software, meaning it's free, and you have the ability to use it, manipulate it as you want, versus commercial licenses that you pay for, and you have either subscription or a set number. And that goes down to personal license versus enterprise license. As a person, you would buy Windows for your PC, but as an industry, you may buy 50 licenses to cover the whole building. And as you install and use those licenses up, you're eligible to use all 50. That's pretty much the gist of what we're saying here. So as opposed to just having one license, you'll have multiple to be used in your industry, in your enterprise.
What's great about the enterprise is they sell you usually seats. And since they sell you seats, what does that mean? If that computer A goes down and you replace it with computer B, since you are no longer using that Windows in computer A, you have successfully been able to now transfer that license to computer B without having to pay for another seat. That's basically what they pay for, is how many seats, how many computers are they going to be running at a given time. And usually they have more than what they need.
I always want more. I kind of talked about PII because of my background, but personally identify information, which can work in a lot of different industries, credit cards, things of that nature. It's still weird giving out that type of information, but are anyone familiar with the Google and the Palm? Has anybody seen that new deal? Amazon, I'm sorry, did I say Google? Amazon. So Amazon One, I think it's called. Google that. Instead of using your thumb at places now or your finger, you can they say your palm print is more unique, and now you'll be paying by waving your palm across the devices that they have it set up with, and they're going to roll it out to all of the industries, the Walmarts, the Targets. So you won't have to pull your card out anymore. You just wave your hand across the machine, and it recognizes you.
Are you telling me that I'll be able to pay with the mark of the beast in my hand? Is that what you're saying?
Look at you.
I just want to make sure you're clear on what exactly you're telling me right now.
Medical records, they do that as well. Here at Baptist, you put your palm on a reader.
I'm Catholic, not Baptist. Sorry.
Medical records from there.
But that's neat.
Here all day.
I think about it. I think that's neat. The fact that you won't even have to pull out, they made it so your phone was your way of talking with NFC. Now they're using your palm. No, Ronald, hopefully.
What happens if somebody runs around with my hand and just starts waving it? Like if they don't care, would they still be able to buy stuff?
So you got to be careful with that. So that now you got to watch out for people behind you. Are they shoulder surfing with your, like, I don't know. No, we don't want to use any DNA. And Chris just dropped the link for the information, which I think is pretty neat. We got a few. Do you want to? What's the deal? What Diego, want to kill it now or push through?
You guys tell me. It's your dime.
I'm looking at faces. I'm trying to read some faces. We have like 6 slides or something.
8. But no way.
Thumbs up if you want to continue.
I like it. David said, let's go. Ron, what you think? Camille, Faison, we can push through. I won't keep. Okay. I like it. I'm going to say that was the majority. We're going to make it work. Try your best to be very careful with your PII. And also when you're in an industry where you're handling others' PII, be very mindful and careful with it. Rule of thumb, if you treat it like it's yours and not like me, you'll be more careful with it. So that won't be much of an issue. All right. I like this one. Communication tips and professionalism. Kareem, if you can, sir.
Communication techniques and professionalism. Use proper language. Avoid jargon, acronyms, and slang when applicable. Maintain a positive attitude / project confidence. Actively listening, taking notes, and avoid interrupting the customer. Be culturally sensitive. Be on time. If late, contact the customer. Avoid distractions. Personal calls, text / social media sites. Deal with difficult customers or situations. Set and meet expectations, timeline, and communicate status with the customer. Deal appropriately with customers' confidential and private materials.
Thank you, Kareem. I feel like that's just being a good person and also following some standard operating procedures. I will talk to you in a way that you understand. I will always present myself in a way that is mindful of our differences, but also respectful and just wanting to do the job that I'm being paid for too. So just meeting those expectations, those standards, that's just being the best version of yourself. I agree with that. Let's keep it moving. Change management overview. Okay. Use basic change management best practices when making changes to technical systems. There is always a chance issues with the rise. Of course, change management is implementation of policies and procedures to reduce the risk of such issues causing a disruption to services. It's already probably in there, and it's really neat because, like I said, you got a certain set of rules that you follow. If you follow them, adhere to them, you'll stay safe. ITIL configuration management model. ITIL, which is IT Infrastructure Library, is a standard that's used in the industry for documentation and delivery of IT services. Believe it or not, ITIL has a certification as well, just FYI. Through ITIL, configuration management is employed using the following. A CI, which is configuration item. That's an asset that requires specific management procedures. So it can be a certain system, certain entity. It has its own requirements. Everything is set up for just that particular item. We'll talk about that. Baseline, which is the current configuration or the benchmark, what's going on right now. And CMS, which is the configuration management system, which we kind of talked about those. They can be a part of your help desk, how you actually have these things located, information about it, and how you are addressing those things. Just another management system to help you out. So I think that's really neat to have those things in place. I was on an asset management team as well. So every PC every monitor and every MRI, X-ray equipment all had an asset tag. We had the number, the serial number, the people to call. So all that, having that information available makes it so you don't have to search for it. So we had that on a document, and when something went offline or end of life, we kept it and just put it in a different place on our Excel file. We just put it in red so they let people know that we didn't have it. Documenting business processes could include everything that happens within a business during the workday, or it could include just certain important changes, such as a hire of a new employee, or if a old employee leaves. Also, various tasks are accomplished within businesses, including how systems and networks are configured, whom can make changes, the process for requesting changes, and how and when to replace systems. So all this is located within your IT infrastructure documentation. If you are, which you'll just reach out to your supervisor, but if you didn't have them available, you kind of see the hierarchy of who addresses certain issues if it's not you personally. Like I said, good information to have. All right, this is another good one. I want someone to read this one for me. Chris, I'm coming back to you, sir.
Risk analysis, change board, and backout plan. Risk analysis, an analysis of risks associated with performing the change and not performing the change. Change board, depending upon the size of the business or the scope of the change board could be a single person or an entire group. The change board will review all documentation surrounding the change requests and make final decisions whether to approve or disapprove the change. Backout plan, establish a step-by-step plan of how to reverse course in case of unforeseen issues while implementing the change.
Thank you, sir. Anytime you attempt to buy some new technology or invest in a new application, it goes before a board, and that board recognizes how beneficial can it be to our enterprise, and possibly what's the fallout of it not working. So you address the risk of it, you analyze the risk, and you also create a backup plan if by any chance that doesn't work. And it happens all the time. So we're lucky to have testing environments, or we can use a virtual machine to address any issues before we make it live. That's the plus side. But in certain industry, that wasn't the case. So they had ways to address it on the front end to let us know, hey, if this is something that we gotta look forward towards using, what's the outcome of it not working and how to proceed. I think that's just forward thinking and just being mindful that, it doesn't always work. And you gotta have a backup plan, a backout plan. All right. I'm gonna go through this really quickly. Best practices continued. Guidelines for using change management best practices. Ensure that there's a separate document for each system. We talked about that. Each system, server, or network, they have their own documentation. You're using the ITIL for configuration management. Document the need for change. Utilize the change board for approval of changes. Carefully consider how changes could affect other systems. Every change must have a backup plan prior to moving forward. The timing of changes must be considered to minimize the impact of business. That's why you see a lot of updates over the weekend. Once the change has been implemented, a thorough assessment should be completed to assist with future change management projects. So feels like common knowledge there, but there's a method to the madness. And there we are. I'm gonna go here, give it to you, Diego.
So we're at the end here. As we know, there is a lab associated with this, but overall, by this point, we should be able to describe the appropriate safety procedures and different techniques in given scenarios, apply the appropriate controls when faced with these scenarios. And as we said, unfortunately, We are no one's friend in these given scenarios, so we need to be able to address any prohibited content and activity. And inside the incident response plan, we need to make sure that the proper chain of custody is adhered to, and as we stated, that the information is secure. Lastly, we also covered what was change management. As for the CCB, the Change Control Board usually is available within all Fortune 500 companies, but as I said, it could be just one person when it is a small mom and pop. Either which way, we want to make sure if I'm going to change something on a firewall and I only have about half an hour to do it per se and half an hour to back out in total hour, we need to make sure that whenever that time comes, if necessary, we need to pull back. We need to have that back out plan initiated because time is running out. Therefore, whatever it is that we couldn't do, we learn, and which is called lessons learned from the given situation. Then go back to the CCB, let them know that whatever it is that we learned from that given scenario, and obviously, hopefully get it approved. Risk analysis entails how much appetite for risk they actually have. And depending on the company, believe it or not, doing nothing is a choice, as one of our rock people may know. Who says that one? Otherwise, any questions on this one? I think it's Led Zeppelin, isn't it? If you haven't made a choice, you still made a choice. I don't know. All
You
kidding
choose not
aside.
to do anything. Yeah, so that's a choice.
All right, this is where this session concludes. If there's no other questions, please proceed.